So we are on our way to Anderson, South Carolina. There is an 84 Trans Am there with not only the 700 R4 transmission, which I need. It's a rebuilt unit, used, but only has about 400 miles on it according to the owner. And the good thing about it is that what I'm buying it for is about the cost that I would be paying for, about the same cost that I'd be paying for a new transmission of the same type. I'm also getting the entire car, which includes a short block, 400 short block that has a cam and some ramjet fuel injection and some other things like that in it. Sounds like it should be a pretty good transplant for the Chevelle. I just wanted to give you a little taste of what we're doing here. I don't know if you call it a mistake, but we had a snow last night that it was originally only supposed to be probably less than an inch, and it turned out to be about 7 inches in my house, in some areas about 10 inches. But this is what you get. Snow's about melting off, but we're on the highway and people are obeying the speed limit. My gosh, what can you expect out of this? It's not too bad, except that it makes the what would normally be a 2-hour commute almost 3 hours, and so we're just getting there a little bit later than we planned, and hopefully they'll allow us to do the to film a little bit there while we're getting it, and be a little interesting for both of us to watch. All right, we'll bring you back. All right, everybody, here we are in Anderson, South Carolina, a nice little neighborhood. Of course, what I came here for is right back here. 84 Trans Am, the 400 small block and a 700 R4 transmission. There's the proud last owner. Say hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it, but we're loading it up on quite an incline here, and one back brake working made it just a little bit hair-raising. So anyway, getting on the road here, and we'll talk to you later. In the course of working on the Chevelle, we ran the numbers on the engine block and determined that it was a 305, and the engine, we don't know from what vehicle it came out of. We do know that it's not terrible, but it does smoke a little bit, use a little bit of oil, and more importantly, after get it out on the road, I determined that the transmission is really in bad shape. It does move the car, but it won't shift down into first without manually shifting down. And it isn't the vacuum modulator. I've already tried that. It isn't the linkage. Linkage is proper in the proper place. And the housing on the back leaks like a sieve. You can't drive it for more than a couple minutes. When the oil heats up, when the transmission fluid heats up, it's all over the ground. So my brother-in-law, who is my resident mechanical expert, suggested that I get a 700 R4 instead of trying to rebuild the Turbo 350. So I went about looking for a car with a 700 R4 in it, hopefully one that was already, I wouldn't have to rebuild maybe. That brings me to another car, which is right over here. This is a 1984 Trans Am and it isn't much to look at. It possibly could be rebuilt, but you'd have to completely rip the interior out. It's been sitting out in the weather and water's gotten in, and it's so musty smelling. You'd have to rip everything out. In fact, the guy I bought it from, and I'll try and include a couple little videos of when I went and got the car. But the gentleman I bought it from was going to make a drag car out of it. In other words, probably rip out the entire interior. But I didn't buy it for the body. I bought it for that transmission, which I apologize for all the walking around. It's a little bit tough to put them all in one spot. This is a 700R4 transmission. Pardon all the other junk hanging around it, but it has been not only rebuilt, but it was rebuilt by Monster Transmissions to back up a highly modified engine, which is right over here. Sorry, a little more alert, walking. And this was the clincher of the whole deal. Not only did I get a transmission when I bought the car, but I got this engine as well. This engine, and this is the reason why I decided to keep it, to buy this particular car I should say, is a copy of what's termed as a Ramjet 350. So very quickly, I know this is just a mass of wires here, but we have the keyed portion, which is what this switch is doing, of the AC, keyed portion of the power for the engine. We of course have the battery running the starter and ignition as well. There's my fancy little start switch there, and we're going to give it a little bit of a try here. We're going to hook up the power to the ignition system, flip on the controls here, you can hear that running, and then I'm going to try and put you back over here for just a second. We're going to see if we can run this for just a minute or two. Well, I say a minute, a second or two. So give you a little more background on what I'm planning to do with this engine. The engine, I think itself is fine mechanically, but this portion of it, that universal ECM, is just, it needs to go. You can see that there's 6 connectors there. Each one has at least 6 or 8, some as many as a dozen wires coming off of them. And I don't know what all they go to. I'm sure they're there for options that probably don't even need on this vehicle. The 700R4 does have some electronic controls to it, or can, which I think that's what some of these wires are for. I'm probably going to not have that. It's probably going to be mechanical. I am going to change this over and take out that ECM and run Mega Squirt on it. For those of you who don't know what Mega Squirt is, it basically will take the place of those brains there. You can do some other things with it, but I'm just going to run the fuel injection with it. If you have the time, you can go to DIY Auto Tune. They did an article where they did a Mega Squirt on not this engine exactly, but a 350 in a 77 Nova, and they're doing just about exactly what I'm planning on doing this. I'm going to use the hardware, all the injectors. There's some other things. This isn't actually mounted, but this is the intake air temperature, or incoming air temperature. We have this is an idle air control, and well, we already got wasp this year. Idle air control, and this is the throttle position sensor, which I'll be using. Sorry for a lot of it is in the shadows, I know. Anyway, and then this one I've got to change a little bit. This is a map sensor for this engine. However, the Mega Squirt 1 and 2, the 2 is actually what I'm using, but both of them have a built-in map sensor. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to do something else to grab the pressure off of this, or if I can somehow modify this and use that opening into the intake to get the manifold pressure. But as I said before, I'm going to let the HEI ignition system do its job. All I have to have is the TAC output, which will go to the Mega Squirt brains and run the engine for me. I know there's been a lot of standing around and talking in this video, and hopefully not so much that you're bored and turn it off, but just trying to explain what's been going on. I did buy the Chevelle, and then of course I bought the Trans Am for the engine and transmission in it. But that's not the end of the story. A good friend of mine in Ellijay, a town just a little ways north of here, has an El Camino of the same year, actually, 69. Unfortunately, he was somewhat older than me, and his health was failing, and he passed away. Prior to that, he had been talking to me about selling me that El Camino, which I would really love to have. In fact, it would have been my, nothing against the Chevelle, but it would have been my first choice instead of the Chevelle, mainly because I like things that are different. And while the Chevelle is not real common, the El Camino is even less common. But at the time, didn't look like it was going to happen. So I bought the Chevelle, and then of course just recently, now his family is finally starting to get some things figured out, and it looks like I may be purchasing the Chevelle from that, or the El Camino from them. So in the meantime, I'm going to continue putting out videos on the Chevelle. I've got some things coming up, like fixing the windows, the window mechanisms or regulators don't work, and I couldn't find anything on the internet about these types of windows. They're a little bit different. And I'm going to try and fix those. We're also going to see about continuing to do some of the body work, such as what you saw over here. It didn't look too bad when I bought the car, but somebody did a lot of putty work, just kind of filled things in and then covered it over. And I'm going to see if I can do that right, do some metal work on there. But we're going to continue putting those on, and then if it changes, then we end up having the El Camino. Everything that the engine and transmission that I have will go in that. And I hope you'll continue watching it. Hopefully you like the El Camino as much as I do. But we are going to call that for right now, and I know this has been a short video, but I hope you can continue watching and enjoy the saga with me.